Greetings! So today is the last part of the Rosa Gallery Swatchathon. So we still have 30 colors to go through, but a lot of them are reusing pigments that we've seen before. So this should not be a very long video. So we are starting the earth colors with color 719, Yellow Ochre, which is a mix of two pigments. So we have PY43, pigment yellow 43, which is new to us. It is natural yellow iron oxide. So I think we saw the synthetic version of this pigment before, and it's also the other pigment in this color. But yeah, so the PY43 is a color that is semi-opaque, semi-transparent to transparent, depending on how the pigment is sourced and treated. It is one of those inorganic colors, and it's a color that has an excellent light fastness. Like I mentioned, it is mixed in this color with PY42, which is synthetic yellow iron oxide. Color 772, Golden Ochre. This one is made from PY42, so pigment yellow 42. Just mentioned it. It is synthetic yellow iron oxide. We saw it earlier. With this pigment, you can find a lot of different hues, all have the same pigment code. So this one is just a different source of the pigment. So it has a slightly different color. Color 751, Aurelin. I was excited to get to this one. This one is a single pigment, transparent yellow, that is made from PY150. This is nickel azo yellow, an organic pigment that is semi-transparent, though I would say that this one is very transparent. And it's one of those that have an excellent light fastness. There are not many transparent yellows in the watercolor world, so we are quite fortunate to have this one. Then we have color 735, Quinacridone Gold. This is a really special color in this case, because as a naming convention, the name Quinacridone Gold, we probably can find it in every single range. To be more accurate, it should probably be called Quinacridone Gold Hue, because it used to be made from a single pigment, but that one has been discontinued for quite some time. So most colors with that name now are a mix of various pigments to try and get as close as possible to the original color. Now, in the case of this Rosa Gallery color, it is a mix of three pigments. It is also quite unique. We have a very orange version of this color here. It is a really nice, glowy, warm orange, but it's also quite different from all the other Quinacridone Gold hues that I've seen before. The one we have now has three pigments, like I said. It has PY151, which is benzimidazolone yellow. It has PY42, which is our synthetic yellow iron oxide. And then it also has PR264, which is our pyrrole red ruben. So all in all, we have colors that are semi-transparent in this mix. It is a really different selection than what we are used to, like I said. So the resulting color is more orange. It is a really nice orange, but it is quite an unexpected hue for a color named Quinacridone Gold. Color 757, Madder Brown. This one is a mix of two pigments. We have PR101, our synthetic iron oxide red, and then we have PR264 that I just mentioned, which is pyrrole red ruben in this mix. The resulting color is a very moody, transparent, deep red. It has a really nice hue, a really good vibrancy. It's a really interesting mix that kind of reminds me a bit of Perline Red or Perline Maroon, depending on the brand. Color 736, English Red. This one is a single pigment paint made from PR101, our pigment red 101, synthetic iron oxide red. So this one is not very granulating. I would say it is a semi-transparent color. Doesn't seem to be all that opaque compared to others that I've seen. And it is a really beautiful muted red hue, a bit like brick red. Color 769, Carbon Red. This is a really interesting color. It is a custom mix color. So in this one, we find three pigments. We have a blue, pigment blue 36, which is our cobalt chromite. So we have a sort of a medium blue with granulation here. Then in this mix, we also have PR254, which is pyrrole red. So this one is a transparent red. And then we also have PBK7, and that's lamp black. So this mix is two inorganic pigments, the blue and the black, and one organic pigment, the red. So you have two granulating colors and one transparent color, which makes for this really interesting mix. In the mass tone, you have this deep, deep red, like wine red, really intense. And as you dilute it, the characteristics of the pigments and its composition come through. So the red makes for an undertone that's red. And then you have the granulation of the blue and the black that add a lot of character to this color. 758, Caput Mortuum, made from a single pigment red 101, so PR101, synthetic red iron oxide. It is an inorganic pigment. It is made from iron oxide, and depending on how you treat it or how you source it, the hue is going to change. So we've had English Red 2 colors ago that was also the same pigment, but it was a very different hue. We're going to see this pigment again in coming colors, and it's still going to be another different hue. So that's really awesome, but also really confusing when you're looking for something specific. You can't really rely on just the pigment code of a paint to get exactly what you want. In the case of this Caput Mortuum, we have a very muted purplish red with a really interesting granulation. This color seems to be quite opaque, and it would probably be a lot of fun in mixes. 763, Maroon Brown. We have a mix of two transparent pigments here. We have PBR25, which is a new pigment. Benzimidazolone Brown. It is an organic pigment, so it is a transparent color with a decent tinting strength that is also very staining, and this one has an excellent light fastness. In this color, it is mixed with PV23, which we saw earlier, which is dioxazine violet, another very transparent, very staining, very intense color. So when you mix the benzimidazolone brown with the dioxazine violet, you end up with a muted, moody, deep purple red that is really interesting. It goes really, really deep in the mass tone. It is almost like a reddish black. And then as you progressively add water in the mix, it becomes this really beautiful, muted purple red color. Color 733, Burnt Sienna. So like I mentioned, this is yet another color that uses the BR101 pigment, our synthetic iron oxide red. But as you can see, here we have a color that's a lot more orange, a lot more vibrant, and it is significantly more transparent than the Caput Mortuum we just saw. It doesn't seem to have any kind of granulation going, and it is a really beautiful color, I gotta say. I usually prefer when my burnt sienna are made with PBR7, pigment brown 7, which is iron oxide brown, but I can see a use for this specific version of burnt sienna as well. Color 721, Raw Sienna. So this is a color that's always hit or miss for me. Most raw sienna that I've tried are very patchy, very weird. They're not fun to use for me. So it's not a color that I kind of go to, but when I can find a good one, I really like it. And I think this is a good one. It is a mix of two pigments. We have PBR7 that I just mentioned and PY42. So we have our natural brown iron oxide in the PBR7. It is a pigment that can have a lot of variations. Again, like the other iron oxides we've seen, it's a pigment that's very light fast, a bit more muted, and the transparency usually varies depending on the way the color is prepared. With this one, we have PY42 in the mix. That's our synthetic yellow iron oxide. So this raw sienna is made from brown and yellow. It is beautiful. It looks like it's a not patchy version of this color, so I really like that. I feel like it has some really subtle color variations in this mix, but since it's with a brown and a yellow, it's very, very subtle. But 788, Carbon Yellow. So we saw Carbon Red just a few moments ago. Now we have Carbon Yellow, and I didn't really know what to expect with this color, but I gotta say, I really like it. It's a bit like if you took the colors that are made with the very granulating black pigment, the Mars black pigment, and any kind of staining color, like this idea, but you push it just a bit more to add a little something extra to it. In this case, we're working with three pigments again. So we have PBK7, which is our lamp black. It's opaque, it's granulating in this case. It is responsible for the very dark colors you see in this mix. And then with it, we have PY150. So that's nickel azo yellow. That's the transparent yellow. So that's the color that provides that glowy undertone. And then we also have PR101. So that's our synthetic iron oxide red. Now, like I've said many times, this is a pigment that can have various hues. It's a bit hard to tell which one was used in this case, but the resulting color is really, really interesting. In the mass tone, we have a slightly yellowish black kind of color. And then as you progressively dilute this color, the texture shows up and the glow of the colors come through the texture. And it's a really, really fun color. I really like it. I don't think I've seen any that are quite like this. So I'm really glad that Rosa made this one. Color 722, Umber. This is also a color that's always a bit hit or miss. In this case, it is not named raw umber, but usually I know that raw sienna and raw umber, I run into the same issues with them. And it's mostly that they are quite patchy. They're a bit more transparent, but the application of them is really difficult. They don't settle down evenly. They're kind of mottled, and I don't really like that. But here we have a really beautiful umber color made from pigment PBR7, so our brown iron oxide. It is a very muted kind of grayish brown color. It is not the strongest of colors in terms of values, but I really like how smooth it is, and it seems to be fairly transparent. Again, I feel like this one is very serviceable, and I could see myself use this one, which is always, the main factor. 746, Burnt Umber. So we just had umber, now we have burnt umber. It's basically the same pigment. Again, it's PBR7, but this one is what they call the calcined version. I'm not sure how to say that, but it's basically burnt. They cooked it. And when you cook these iron oxide pigments, you get different colors, which is why we have raw sienna, raw umber, burnt umber. Come to think of it, we don't really have a raw ochre and a burnt ochre, do we? Anyway, so burnt umber here is a really nice color. Again, it's not the strongest in terms of values, but it seems to have a really nice and even hue that seems to do well, even diluted. And from what I can see of the swatch swatch, I think it is a fairly transparent version of this pigment. It is a very useful color to have in a palette. It is an excellent mixer generally, and quite often it is a really good candidate to mix a neutral with ultramarine. 753 Royal Brown. This one is a single pigment paint made of our PBR 25 pigment, which is benzimidazolone brown that we saw not too long ago. It is a very transparent color, staining. It is beautiful. It is really intense and deep. It's a slightly warm red when you dilute it, but in the mass tone, again, it looks almost black. It's a really, really rich red. This one is also an excellent mixer, and this color mixed with the Aureolin, the transparent yellow, or nickel azo yellow, they always make for really interesting, rich brown or orange colors. Color 720, Sepia. This Sepia is a mix of 3 pigments that we've all seen before. So we have PBR7, our natural brown iron oxide. We have PBK7, which is our lamp black. And then we also have PR177, and that's anthraquinone red. So basically a brown, a black, and a red. What we end up with is a rich, deep brown. It seems to be fairly transparent, and in the mass tone, you can go quite dark with it. It's the kind of color that would be really fun to make a monochromatic study of something. Color 761, golden brown. We are again going into the custom mixes, which is always super exciting. This one is a lot of fun. It is a really earthy, muted brown color that is opaque and deep in the mass tone. But again, as you dilute it, that's when the granulation shows up, and you get this play of color between the yellow, the PY43 that's in the mix, and the brown, the PBR7 that's in the mix. Both pigments here are natural iron oxides, but one is a yellow iron oxide and the other one is a brown iron oxide. Color 723, Mars Brown. This one is an interesting one in my opinion. I don't think I've seen a lot of colors that are quite like that. It is a fairly transparent color made from 3 pigments. We have PY42, synthetic yellow iron oxide. We have PR101, synthetic red iron oxide, and then PBK7, lamp black. So yellow, red, and black gives us this really nice brown color. It kind of reminds me of coffee. It looks like a very useful brown to have in a palette. 759, warm gray. So we are entering the world of neutrals. This one is a mix of 3 pigments. So we get PR254 in there, which is Hero Red. We have PBK7, lamp black, and PW6, titanium white. From the look of this color, I think it is a version of the lamp black pigment that has a bit of granulation, because the color seems to have a bit of texture going. And again, they include a white in the mix, but the color doesn't appear to be washed out or too pale. It still has a good value, it still has a good intensity, and overall it makes for a really interesting reddish warm gray. 784, cobalt brown. Now this one I'm particularly excited about because it's one of those colors that I love to mix a lot. When I was playing with Schmincke colors, I ended up mixing these 2 pigments and it made for a really interesting gray that's separated between the green and the red. Now this one is named cobalt brown, so the balance is made so that the color is a bit more on the red side and looks a bit more brown, but you still get that green pigment, the PG26, which is cobalt chromite green, so a granulating muted green mixed in with PR108, which is cadmium red, so a slightly opaque muted granulating red. So you get a color that even in the mass tone has a lot of character and texture, and then as you dilute it, the pigments separate really nicely and you get a nice back and forth between both of these hues. It's a really fun color. 768, we just had cobalt brown, now we have cobalt gray. It is a mix of 3 pigments, so we have PR108 in there that we just talked about, cadmium red, the slightly muted opaque granulating red, then we have PB28, that's a cobalt blue. As we've seen in previous colors, this one can go from more of a aqua color to more of a blue color. Hard to say which one was used in this mix, but it is in there. And then we also have PBK7, lamp black. So we have 3 granulating colors in there, and they make for a really moody, really interesting color. The main effect of the granulation is a bit more on the cool side with the black and the blue, but then you also get the red that pops in and adds this warmth to the mix, which kind of feels like a really stormy sky right before the storm. 737, Payne's Gray. Now that's another one of those ubiquitous colors like sap green that you can find in almost every single range of paints out there. Not 2 formulas are quite the same. The Rosa Gallery one has 3 pigments, so we get PB15 Colin 1, which is our phthalocyanine blue red shade, so a intense, transparent, slightly reddish blue. We have PV19, which is our quinacridone violet. Now, as a pigment, this one can have different hues. It can go from a bit more pink to a bit more purple. It's a bit hard to say which one was used in the mix, but there's this component in there. And then we also have PBK7. In this case, it seems to be a transparent PBK7 because there's no granulation that's visible, but the resulting color is a very very dark deep blue that's really nice and smooth and rich and has this incredible range of values from super dark to really light when you dilute it with a lot of water. 765 Violet Black. So another custom color. This one also has 3 pigments. It has PV19, quinacridone violet. So again, that transparent magenta kind of color. PBK7, Lamp Black again. So from the look of this color, I guess it would be the more granulating version of the pigment. And then we also have PR108, Cadmium Red, the granulating muted red. So what we end up with is this really beautiful violet color. It is a bit of a warm violet color, I feel like, in the mid-range. When you have it very dark, it's like a slightly purplish black. And when you have it more diluted, it looks more like purple gray. But in the middle, in between these two, you have this warmth that comes in through the color. And it makes for a really, really beautiful color. Again, 747 Black Grape is also a very dark, moody, granulating color. This one is much more neutral, closer to black. It is still a mix of 3 pigments. So we have PBK7, Lamp Black, PV19, our quinacridone violet, so our transparent magenta. And then this one also has PV3, which we've seen earlier. It is the M-methyl violet, the fugitive color. So a bit of a bummer that it's in there. If we're lucky, it's gonna be replaced by perhaps the more light fast PV23 eventually. That would be great. Like from one transparent purple to the next. They're not quite the same in hue, but I think most people would make do with the trade-off of a different color in exchange for light fastness. So this color in the mass tone appears to be black. But then when you add water in the mix, you have this little bit of purple violet that comes through. So it makes for a slightly colored gray. Color 760 Black Green is pretty much the same idea, but this one has this green undertone rather than the purple undertone. It is a mix of 3 pigments. So we have PB15, which is phthalocyanine blue, PBK7, Lamp Black, and PG7. That's our good old phthalocyanine green blue shade. So transparent blue, transparent green, and a slightly granulating black. This color is a bit like perylene green, just a little bit, but in a mass tone it looks completely black. And then you dilute it and you get this little undertone that comes through. It adds a lot of character, and again, these colors are great if you want to do some sort of monochromatic painting. The fact that they can go from really, really dark to really, really light is the main feature here. 770 Carbon Black. Initially, when I saw the name of this color before I swatched it, I expected it to be just a black color. I didn't quite have in mind that it might be something in the same vein as the previous carbon colors that we've seen, because carbon black is a pigment on its own. So sometimes some company will have a black paint that is just carbon black, that is just this black pigment in it. In the case of this color here, though, we get something slightly different. It is a mix of 2 pigments. So we have Lamp Black and we have PY42, which is our synthetic yellow iron oxide. So PBK7, PY42, a black and a yellow. And when you dilute this color, it granulates so beautifully. It is a really subtle thing, but you get this slightly warm hue that comes through the mid-range of values that is from the yellow. And I really didn't expect it from this color. I expected it to be a bit more flat. But no, it is really, well, I guess dimensional. It has a lot of character, it has a lot of depth, and it's a really, really fun color. Again, I feel like I say that for every color. Perhaps I do. 724 Neutral Black. So this one is always a bit odd. It is present in almost all the ranges as well, and the formula is always different. And sometimes, in some cases, it is a bit superfluous because this color can be really close to Payne's Gray. Here, we seem to have a color that's in the mass tone appears to be black, but as you dilute it, gets a bit more blue. It is really subtle, but that's kind of the impression I get from it. It is a mix of 3 pigments, so we have PB15 color 1. That's phthalocyanine blue red shade. We have PBK7, Lamp Black again, and also PR177, our anthraquinone red. So transparent blue, transparent red, and a black that seems to be again that sort of transparent to mid-range transparency black, because it's not a strongly granulating color, but I feel like there's a little bit of something going on to a certain level of dilution. And then we are moving on to our last 3 colors, which are the shimmery colors that this range offers. There's 3 of them. We have gold, silver, and bronze. There's not a lot to say about these. When it comes to shimmery colors or mica paints, I feel like seeing them does all the work, and there's not that much that I can say. But from my swatches, I can see that they are fairly transparent. I would say that the gold and the silver are semi-transparent, and then the bronze is semi-opaque. It's not a huge difference, but you can definitely see that the bronze is a bit more covering than the other 2. The gold pigment is a nice warm gold. The silver silver is perhaps a bit muted, like not that shimmery, but it's kind of a shimmery gray. And then the bronze, it reminds me a bit of copper coins or whatnot, like this reddish, slightly shimmery color. Now, none of these are intensely shimmery or sparkly. As with most mica paints, these are more on the slightly subtle thing, but they add something super fun when you do a physical painting and let's say you want to offer that to someone. It's always a lot of fun to get a real painting, and when you look at it in the light, there's something special about it. And I feel like the shimmery paints or the mica paints are good for that. They add that little extra that makes it more interesting to have an original painting in hands. And believe it or not, but that's it for now. Pretty sure that eventually Rosa is gonna expand their range, but for now, that's it. That's the 90 colors in the range. Well, -1, I didn't showcase zinc white, but every other color was in there. Just as a quick ending note, again, I apologize if there were any mistakes or inaccuracies. I used the info I had on hand, but I might have misread something or written down my notes with mistakes. On the paint side of things, these are all really great. There's a lot of good things going about this professional watercolor paint range. There's a lot of colors available. There's a lot of really interesting custom mixes with a lot of character. And from a more practical side of things, these paints are all the same price. They're all the same series. Like so far, Rosa hasn't split their range into series depending on the price of the pigment. In reality, you might see a bit of a price difference between some sellers or whatnot, or some newer colors versus older colors, but it's not as drastic as the difference you see between a Series 1 paint and a Series 4 paint in another range. Also, this is something that I was really excited to mention at the end of the whole swatching process, but you saw me swatch all of these, and you saw me go really, really heavy on the mass tones. I put down a lot of paint. I wanted the full effect of the full mass tone, and none of these had a sheen. If you don't know what the sheen is when referring to watercolor, it's because of the binder in watercolor, which is usually gum arabic. It is a water-soluble binder. It is what attaches the pigment to your paper. But on its own, if you put it down on paper, it can have this shine to it. Not sparkly, just a sheen. It will catch the light. It will be a bit glossy. And sometimes some formula of paint, when you paint with the mass tone, so when you paint with a really intense color, you get that glossy effect in the paint. With these, I went really heavy in the mass tone, and none of them had that glossy effect, which is amazing. I don't know if it's the same for the tube paints, because tube paint can separate if the pigment is heavier. Pan paint is a bit more stable. It won't separate weirdly because it's dry, you know. But yeah, none of the colors had a sheen, and that just blew my mind. I really love these. I am looking forward to painting more with these, and fingers crossed that they become, you know, readily available everywhere. I think it would be a really good thing. These are affordable, they're really good, they're really nice, they paint well, and I love the fact that they come in full pans. It's definitely one of the more accessible professional paint range out there for now. I don't think I've forgotten anything. If you have any questions, if you have any comment, any experience, any anecdote to share, feel free to do so in the comment. That's always much appreciated. And again, thank you so much for watching this video and this series of swatching. I will put together all 3 videos into one super long video for the sake of having all the references, all the colors in one spot. But yeah, next week I should be moving on to something else. So we'll see. In the meantime, again, thank you so much for watching. Have a great week. Take care and see you all in the next video. Bye bye.